And I'm just going to set up this side of the camera for a moment and welcome Marilyn Smith today. I just want to introduce her properly. Marilyn first attended Unity Kitchener in November 2003 and became a member in 2004 and immediately knew she found her spiritual home. She's taken an active interest in Unity Kitchener, serving on several teams, organizing events and fundraisers, and currently serving on the UK board. Professionally, Marilyn's an optician and taught at the University of Waterloo School of Optometry for almost 30 years. She opted for an early retirement to pursue her true passion, which is teaching and speaking across Canada on both optometry educational topics, as well as personal and team growth and development. She's a certified facilitator for Bob Proctor's The Science of Getting Rich program, True Colors, and an accredited life coach through the Brave Thinking Institute. And welcome today, Marilyn. And I'm just going to give you the screen.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I've just got chat on here. I'm just going to get out of here a second. Just get that down. Everybody see the screen okay? So a couple things I want to say first. First of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to create something and do something for a talk, because you have to sort of dive a little deeper and soar a little higher to get some information to actually share with everybody. See, I want to mention that I have heard your story so many times from my gay and lesbian friends. You know, afraid to come out, went somewhere else, found some of the same things, eventually did, for most people, find a lot of joy and happiness in their lives, in a partner, and, you know, went on to do many other things. But it's a sad thing to me that the world just doesn't see it that way. And I'll never get that either. So, and thank you for the choices of music today. It's absolutely beautiful to see these songs reflected in their loving words that they are, but also in a way that we're seeing, you know, to have Pride honored, have Indigenous History Month honored, and we're all here together to honor all those things. So thank you for your beautiful musical selections. So this talk came from being maybe inspired by some, maybe challenged by some, as often talks do. I was inspired by one of our speakers, Mel Horvath Lucid, which many of you know. I was really inspired when she chose to use some language we don't usually use in a church-like or center-like setting a number of months ago, and then she very comfortably talked about why she chose to use what we'd call a four-letter word. And I thought, wow, you know, it's so great that people can express themselves the way they want to in this wonderful, loving environment. I was also inspired by Wendy Carr, and she did an Easter talk for us. And I remember her saying, oh, I'm a little bit trepidatious about this because I might just, you know, be opening a can of worms. And for some people, they might be a bit upset about this. And I thought the same thing about this talk too. So again, this is an open-ended question. It's a dialogue. It's maybe not answerable, and we may have different answers to our own questions, and that's great. That's what we're here for, right? So Can We Talk is really just going to talk about some unity things and evolution and the movement and some of the words we use. And Charles Fillmore's saying is here that words are also seeds, and when dropped into the invisible spiritual substance, they grow and bring forth their kind. And I thought that was a great way to start with things. I'm going to use a word that comes from Christianity in a different sort of way than we see it in Unity, but the word confession. So I have a confession. I did not grow up in a Christian household. I grew up in a very atheist household. My mother's still a very proud atheist, loves every minute of that kind of stuff. And we have conversations about that all the time. And that's very cool. I'm not a believer in a God being. I don't call myself a Christian. There's all kinds of things about this that make sense to me in Unity, but for other people don't make sense, and that's okay, because we're all different. We come from different spaces and we use things differently. So I just want to say that ahead of time, that it's all good. It's all good. So these are a few of my mentors. These are people that I've taken ideas from, that I've worked with personally, that I've gotten to know. Bob Proctor now and Wayne Dyer are both passed away now, but some of the things they challenged me to do as the various courses I took from them were so enthralling and yet so scary. asking you to move to the edge when you didn't know if you stepped off the cliff or if you're going to have anything hold you up. I love that one of my favorite saying, Wayne Dyer's, is, "Do you spend your life looking to be offended?" And I often hear people say, "Well, it's okay for you, you're lucky or you're happy or whatever you are." And I think that is always a choice. It's always meant to be a choice. And being offended is so easy. I never get this, I don't get that, well, whatever it is, but it's kind of fun. And guilt and worry are two useless emotions. And I also thought that was great, because a lot of times things that are based in a church language situation are often based on guilt and worry. So let's put some of those things aside. Bob Proctor said, "All the power you'll ever need is within you." And we talk about that in Unity, that it's all inside us now. And we have it here and now. And we sort of believe in that situation. And fear and faith both demand you believe in something you cannot see. So you get to choose. It's like the Course in Miracles talked about, everything is based in fear or love. There's only two emotions when it comes all right down to it. And you get to choose. Is it love or is it fear? Mary Morrissey is also another mentor of mine. I took her course, Brave Thinking, through Dream Builders Life Coaching. And she also has a really interesting history amongst Unity and New Thought things as well, and got sued by her ministry for her now ex-husband literally stealing millions of dollars from the ministry and having to regrow herself from the beginning up, and finding ways to dig a little bit deeper. And one of her favorite things to talk about is to get curious. And getting curious means that you have to take some of the inspiration, but also use it with action. As she says, inspiration without action is really entertainment. And while something can be inspiring, it's not transformative to actually do something with it. And the first currency of the universe is the idea. So as you say, and all these speakers tend to be in the same kind of realm of things. There's a belief in the universe working to co-create. We are co-creators with the universe. The higher the vibration that we live in, the more that we see the good in and expect the good in what we have. So I'll leave that with you to know that you also have mentors and all kinds of people in your life that give you all kinds of things to be able to think about as well. Let me just move my slides forward here. So a little bit of history of the time that Unity was created. So we know that, I've got another slide about that, but there's a New Thought movement happening in the mid-1800s, 1850s to 1890s. There was a lot going on, particularly in the Eastern US. And we know a lot of this was around the area of Concord, Massachusetts. There's a huge vortex in that space of creative thinking people of the time, and that's sort of continued to be that way. A couple that aren't on this little picture that I found on the internet are people like Thomas Edison, who's creating 10,000 patents as he tried to make an electric light bulb. So the time of evolution of that space and time in North American life and probably European life too, was to get people out of the dark of being able to have electric lighting, to get people out of factories and child labor, and a lot of ideas were changed about how families were set up and many, many other things. Also questioning a lot of the church type movements, particularly Christianity. They're questioning the fact that there was people literally saying, this is how you must do it, or else, basically. And these folks like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, they met a bit secretly. I think it was Henry David Thoreau actually that actually would be outside the room, because he was actually a helper on the farm that Ralph Waldo Emerson's family ran. And he liked the talk, but wasn't exactly invited in yet, and yet went to write prolific amounts of things that were kind of amazing of how his look to the New Thought movement was. People like Louisa May Alcott's father were there. So she went on to write Little Women. And some of these people, who are Walt Whitman and Edgar Allan Poe and Emily Dickinson. And these were the people at the beginning of the New Thought movement. It was in the east of the US. It was the belief in transcendentalism. And that was the belief that there is good. There is not a mighty being looking over to judge, that the spirit is in the human and there's no outside God being. Now, that's a very small few statements from a very long set of circumstances. We can have a whole talk about that, or even probably a course in that belief system. But just to sort of start the conversation as to where that came from. These folks went on to write essays like Civil Disobedience. A lot of people know the one Walden, when Henry David Thoreau took himself to a cabin in the woods and literally isolated himself just to listen to nature and to write what moved him, that he was able to see and know about how he actually co-created life. And that was a very, very famous set of writing. And also to live deliberately. So not just taking and accepting what was given by society, by the Ministry of People of the time. They were actually sort of saying, if I want to live deliberately, I also have to have a mind of my own and decide my own future, my own presence, and how that will work for me. This is familiar to you, of course. This is Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, beings of the same kind of era. They were in several places before this. They moved around a little bit, but they were in Kansas City. And they thought some of the same things, but didn't really have a lot of community, if you will, around them in the same way as what was happening in Concord, Massachusetts. So they invented the Unity School of Christianity and eventually called it Unity Church of Practical Christianity. And the idea was to take things that were just accepted as rote, if you will, in the Christian sense of where the Bible was, and devoted themselves to practical Christianity. And a quick funny story, we had a Unity person at Unity Kitchener a number of years ago. He's since passed away. And I remember Jeff talking about practical Christianity, like, is everybody else impractical? He thought it was kind of a statement that kind of made it sort of like, well, we're better than that. And I don't think that's what Charles and Myrtle actually meant. Of course, they meant just to take it in a more metaphysical way of happening. So this is actually a quote off the internet. Unity describes itself as having no particular creed or set dogma or required ritual. It maintains there's a good in every approach to the good, and it holds that one should focus on the potential good in all, that the essence of every human is divine, regardless of the current behavior. So more of a forgiving, more of an accepting, more of a situation where you did not have to sin and then confess and have that situation sort of turn up. So I truly think, and part of this talk is sort of based on this fact, that if Charles and Myrtle had maybe been in the East, they would have joined those other folks with those conversations and been very supported in the way that they were looking at Christianity as being questioned in the sense of how it was written and how it was put forward. They certainly were exceptionally brilliant in bringing together like-minded people. And they wanted to talk about affirmative prayer, not beseeching kind of prayer, not praying to an outside being to please make it okay. They wanted to see it from within and co-creating. And most of you know the Charles and Myrtle story as it is. And again, that's a whole other talk we could have at some other time. But I wanted to just mention that, sorry, I'm just going to move my slide here a second, that when you look at the internet, and go into looking for Christianity, there is 5 principles of Christianity. So to go into practical Christianity means you have to question these particular principles, but there's a belief in a virgin birth. There's the Holy Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. There is the resurrection, and there is a second coming. A necessity for salvation from sin. So the belief that you must accept Jesus into your heart to correct the sins you have in your life and be able to have eternal salvation. And then an inspiration of the scriptures. So you take them as they are written, as a truth. And Unity really doesn't go there. It says practical Christianity because it takes all of these belief systems and says, let's write this differently. And I guess that's where my one question comes in, is if we believe in Christianity and these are the principles of Christianity, I always question why Unity continues to say they're Christian. Because in some ways, there are situations where we could move away from that. And I truly believe, and that's the challenge in writing this talk, because somebody said, why don't you say this out loud? That if Charles and Myrtle had lived longer, they would have moved away from that too. They wanted Unity to be a movement. They did not want a dogma attached to it. They wanted to be able to have it so that people talked and moved forward, moved along, had evolution through these discussions in that metaphysical sense of using things. So as again, I leave that with you, not to say we should change anything. It's what you believe and how you would want to put that forward. And that's the idea of can we talk? Is Unity having an identity crisis? I think I believe so, which is part of it. And part of it's because Unity Worldwide Ministries, what I saw when I went to go on and look at some of the information about this talk, has a lot of things that say, here's what we believe in, but here's what we don't do. So a lot of the Christian stuff that is there to believe in as sort of a basis of something, but there's a lot of words that turn out to be, but we don't do that, or we do it differently than that. It's like, so why do we have the identity crisis that we need to address now in a different time? I'm reading this great book. It's called From People Pleaser to Soul Pleaser. This was another inspiration. And actually the phrase that came up on page 5, and she says, when I refer to God, please feel free to replace it with whatever word you believe in, such as the universe and all that is, love and source energy and all that is. Actually, I put that in twice, sorry. But I was typing it from the book yesterday. And I thought, why do we keep on saying this? Every time we say God, somebody will say, or whatever you believe in, like whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy. And Unity's definition of God is that God is one power, all good everywhere, all present and all wisdom. Unity speaks of God as light, love, substance, principle, law, and the power of the mind. And it's interesting that we use that word of God, and yet we refer to all these other things. And I'm totally cool with that if everybody did this and if we explained it well each time we talk about unity. My concern is always that if somebody new came into our space and we say the words that we're very comfortable with our meanings to them, is we don't ever explain that, or we rarely explain. I shouldn't say we don't ever, but we rarely explain that. So somebody coming in from the outside saying, oh, this is supposed to be a spiritual place, let's see what they've got to say, and came on any given time, they could just hear the Christian words they've always heard and never hear any different. And that's always my concern about how we speak about things. I like the definition, but I think we have to say the definition more often than just using the word. I'm going to suggest, because I know that there's a lot of people that come into Unity and say, the God of my childhood. And if you look on the far right, on the throne, a being. And interesting enough, a man, and usually a white being that is on a throne with a crown on and that kind of idea, and usually pertaining to judgment, guilt, fear, worry, something that says that somebody is going to be judging me. And from the Christian faith end of things, there's a fundamental Christian, if you will, God, the supreme or ultimate reality, is taken right out of the dictionary. The being perfect in power, wisdom, and goodness, who is worshipped, as in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, as creator and ruler of the universe. And this is the word that we use to describe that when you come to the science end of things, is anthropomorphism, which is giving human traits that something is not a being. So this happens in children's books all the time. We give human traits to animals, for instance. So we would do this all the time. And if you look at the way that God is put into this, there's a human trait value to this. But Unity says that we don't believe in that being, in that separated being, something. I'm raising my hands up because I see people look to the heavens for something to be a separate being that is over all to everything. So this may be making some people uncomfortable, but there's just a truth to the fact that the Christian religion says it in one way and Unity says it in a different way, and that's all okay. But let's just be sure what our definitions are. I know that some of you have been to the Sistine Chapel, and I've been there a couple times. And the picture, that's a poor word for this, the amazing painting of the Sistine Chapel is just incredible. It's overwhelming. It's stunningly beautiful. It's hard to believe Michelangelo literally laid on his back on scaffold and said, I know what I'm doing here, and painted every single part of it. And if you've ever read the book, The Agony and the Ecstasy, about Michelangelo's life, you'll know that he was a tortured soul that did not think he could do enough for this outside God. And I put this part up in particular because this is God coming and giving man, or Adam, human life, right? This is the infusion of the human life part from God to man. I read some things about this part of the painting too, in that God's chest is more convex, sorry, and Adam's chest is more concave, like the going into. Like Michelangelo has so much symbolism and stuff. we could actually have a whole talk about this too, but some of the paintings that are there are actually Michelangelo's way of being angry also with God and with the church. And he made one bishop that he didn't like. He looked like a donkey. And if you look in the lower corner of something, there's some other symbolism in there. So there's a really neat way to look at these paintings that kind of go, there was lots going on in the time. But the idea that we give the human traits to something that is what we don't call a being. So, and that's what happens in most other churches and spaces that have the outside being. We often have it as a male. We often use the word father. And that doesn't happen in necessarily our unities. I would say Unity Kitchener and Unity Spiritual Center of Ottawa are extremely progressive in language. We've long time paid attention to the fact that we don't use certain words in certain ways. We choose not to use certain words. We look at some words of having patriarchy or having a hold over people and keeping them down in a certain place. And a lot of other places do not do that. They'll use the Father God thing very, very easily. So that's what's from usually regular Christianity versus what Unity believes in the big scheme of things. Busy slide. You don't have to read all this. I just put it in here to show you that I went to a website called Christian Learnings, and it was how to describe each of the types of churches Christianity that there is. Unity Church beliefs. I just want you to note how many knots are in the Unity beliefs. So we do not believe in Jesus Christ atonement. We don't believe in baptism. It's called a mental spiritual process. We believe the Bible is not written as is, but written in a more of a metaphysical representation. We don't believe in communion in the body and blood of Christ. We don't believe in heaven and hell as places. We believe in them as states of mind. I can go on with this and you can see it. Original sin is about missing the mark. And the idea is to not need a confession for that, but to do better when we know we've missed the mark and gone through a point of sinning or doing something that we wish to change, that we actually recognize that and move forward with that. We don't believe in sin, and we don't really believe in the Trinity. So it's interesting. All these Christian words are here. They are used in Unity. I found them all on the Unity Worldwide website, but we don't have that belief system. So there's a lot of knots in here that, again, are we professing what we really mean, or are we using things because it's safe language that we don't want to let go of particularly, but we actually mean something else? And I often mean in the safety factor. A friend of mine said, I like Unity, but it really scares me. I'm like, why would you be scared of Unity? Well, like, what if you're not right? Okay, I don't know if we were not right. Well, what if we get to the end and there is Judgment Day? Well, we won't know until we get there. We can't really come back and say anything about it. So unless we're reincarnated into something else that's a better being, we just get to live differently each time we're in this sort of skin suit that we have, right? But interesting that the release of those beliefs and behaviors that are about being afraid make people actually afraid of Unity, which I think is really interesting. And I've heard that from more than one person. I recall another time that a Unity person in our Unity Center in Kitchener, there was a sign that said, "Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place." That was based on a Unity hymn from a long time ago. Some of the founders of Unity Kitchener had gone to the village. They had been so inspired by this. They had a sign made, and it was great. So at some point, there was some discomfort with the word Lord. There was some discomfort in what that kind of meant. There was a lot of hard conversations about that. That doesn't really matter. But this person said to me, you know, with my Catholic upbringing, I'm really glad that sign's here, because if the Lord's here, I'm not going to go to hell. So it gave them permission to be inside the Unity space because, you know, something else is going on the outside and this is a problem. It's like, that's probably not where you want to go with Unity. But for her, it was a bit of a safety factor that, well, at least the Lord was here and the Catholic Church wasn't going to be that mad. So just another way to think about how we portray what we do, how we do, is a lot of in the not statements. Maybe we have to portray them in the are statements or the is statements of what do we believe in, the spiritual side of things versus the religious side of things. And maybe let some of these words simply go. It's time to change them and make sure that people know exactly what Unity stands for. Myrtle Fillmore said, to have faith is to know that whatever we seek and hold in our minds, and whatever we desire in our hearts is already ours. And Charles again said, and when based on the idea, the idea of God was, God is not a person who has set creation in motion and gone away and left it to run down like a clock. God is spirit and infinite mind, immanent force and intelligence everywhere, manifest in nature. And Myrtle also said God is love and is the nature of divine love to give life, joy, peace, and health. So all of these things are true. And yet there's a definition of God that's very different, that what people see when they come into unity might not have described to them. So let's use these words differently if we can, to be able to say that not that there isn't something of God, that's a wonderful word, but we do not think of it as a being or a person. And just to be really qualified on what that means to us and celebrate that. I think unity is a well-kept secret. You know, we don't celebrate what we do and what we have. We try to just make it okay. And let's celebrate that and talk about the love and divine nature and peace and health and that faith that we can have in knowing that we are constantly co-creating with a positive universe that wants us to succeed. Just for a little humor, some of you will remember Saturday Night Live, Father Guido Sarducci. And if you remember that, and that's way back in the 70s and 80s, and he said, if God made a man in his own image, why aren't we like invisible? So the idea, again, of being created in the image of, if there's nothing out there, if it's all energy and vibration and not a being, I guess we'd be invisible. So a little humor to have things just come to the end of that. And what is the definition of Christian prayer? This is another word that people get really stuck on. They come into something and they don't know what it means. And I don't know if Unity always says it really well, but the idea of prayer, and you see on the right-hand side, prayer is described in the Bible as seeking God's favor, pouring out one's soul to the Lord, crying out to heaven, drawing near to God and kneeling before the Father. Now that is biblical Christian prayer. And some of my Christian friends will always start a prayer. Oh, dear Father, God, forgive me, because that is immediately what is necessary to have. It says prayer is giving our attention to God in a two-way spiritual relationship where we have talked to God and we also listen to him. Again, often on the he thing, although that's been taken differently to have more female related, sometimes mother God instead, but still giving it a being in the big scheme of things. For praise, pardon, and petition are three essential elements of prayer. Again, definitions from looking things up on the internet and saying, what is the definition of Christian prayer? All these things turned up. What is the definition of unity? Affirmative prayer. And that's why oftentimes I use the word affirmation, because that's what I believe in, is versus prayer as the word. Prayer as the word is the heavy word, only because, again, people have the idea of maybe a formation of a definition that they've known from earlier. So affirmative prayer is understood in unity as the highest form of creative thought. It includes the release of negative thoughts and holding in mind statements of spiritual truth. Unity teaches the use of meditation and prayer as a way to experience the presence of spirit within, heighten the awareness of truth, and thereby transform our lives. And that to me makes sense, but I don't know how often we say it. So we just say, let's go into prayer. And I'm sure if somebody came on again that didn't know unity, they might wonder where we're coming from that is, who are we speaking to? And are we just asking for forgiveness? Myrtle Fillmore said, affirmative prayer is describing reality without trying to get anything from it. So the idea of the affirmations are, you see the outcome as already done, perfect and whole. So there's tons of words we could consider. You might have more of them. Some of these words might speak to you and resonate with you and say they are good to me, and that's okay. As I said, this is an open-ended conversation and there's no right or wrong answers, but God and church and mother and father and Lord and sin and kingdom and Bible and scripture, heaven and hell and prayer, those are trigger words for some things to have conversation about. The conversation could be, here's what I really mean, or here's how we want to redefine it, or here's how unity takes it. That's cool. But words to live by is, as Charles Fillmore said, if you will start right now with the idea of universal and eternal goodness, uppermost in your mind. Talk only about the good and see with the mind's eye everything and everybody as good. Then you will soon be demonstrating all kinds of good. I was in Calgary a couple of weeks ago giving a talk to an optometry group, and I had a young man take me back to the airport on Monday morning, and it was a really interesting conversation. He said, can I talk to you about my faith? Sure. I knew where this was going to go. So he told me a little bit about his history and one thing and another, and he'd found, the pleasure in his brothers and sisters in a very fundamental Christian way. So I said, well, he asked me about my faith. I said, I have a slightly different take on things. And we had a kind of a conversation. It was slightly one-sided because he told me I was wrong a lot. And I said, your opinion, your opinion, your opinion. And it was actually quite a comfortable conversation, only because I didn't get attached to it. I knew where it was going to go and I knew what was going to happen. And just to sort of come full circle on the Pride Month thing, he got talking about that, and I can get talk about women's things and gay rights things. I can get pretty staunch about where my belief system is. And he said, well, you think about it. If everybody turns gay, there won't be any more children on the earth, and the human race will just die out. I said, well, that's a really interesting observation. And it's funny what C said before. Approximately 1 in 10 people identify in a certain way along that sort of long line of acronyms that we have. So if 1 in 10, and nobody's turning anybody gay, as far as I understand, I don't think this is an issue. But somehow you've made that an issue in your life. And I said, not quite sure what Jesus would do with this, but I suspect he wouldn't have a big problem with it. And he kind of went, whoop, and shut down right then. But end of the conversation, 35-minute ride that was kind of interesting, but it was like, wow, this is a hard one. But you believe what you believe, and that's okay. We talk about believing in other people's paths, allowing people to explore as they need to, and that's okay. But when we come to unity, I love the fact I didn't put it in this talk, but we have something on the front page of many websites saying inclusive, diverse. You are welcome here. Everyone is welcome wherever you are on your path. And that warms my unity heart. And I think that is the perfect situation. I'm going to end with something from our friend Barbara Schreiner-Trudell. She is a CSL and Unity minister. She's with Unity Canada as the prayer chaplain and sits on their board. And I like these words. So the words are what we were talking about today. Can we talk? The creative power of the universe is the one and only source. It is power, love, and joy. It is the beginning, middle, and end of all things, all of life. This power is the light within me that is expressing as me, and I acknowledge it as love. It is in this love that I am strengthened. It is in this love that I am free. It is in this love that I breathe. I am power. I am peace. I am free to be me. And so it is. So I thank you for this time together. I thank you for allowing me to have this conversation out loud. I know for some people it'll mean one thing, and for others it'll mean another. And as I said, there's no right or wrong answers. It's merely a conversation. There is no bad or good word, just like everything comes down to love or fear. Everything comes down to one emotion or the other. And I'll move you forward, and let's have a small time of meditation. If you'd like to get comfortable in your seat, let's have some time together of quiet. I'd invite you to take a deep breath in and release that, letting go. Let's do that one more time. And as you do that, taking that light breath in, go deeply inward and maybe lightly shake out your hands. Set them gently on your lap. Your feet planted on the floor. And sit comfortably and recognize if your shoulders are up around your neck or feeling like comfortable and relaxed. And if you wish to, you may close your eyes if that's comfortable. Let's move into a time of meditation and focus on a favorite unity word of mine, grace. Grace for self, grace for others, grace for our world, grace for our planet. This week in the Daily Word and with Reverend Paul Hasselbeck in his Absolute Word, he wrote, I offer grace to others and to myself. Grace is divine principle, and it is present in its entirety at every point in space at the same time in each one of us. I use this principle of grace to guide, to make whole, and to harmonize. I choose to give grace based on the principles of benevolence and generosity. I always speak my truth, and my words reflect both the meaning I wish to convey, as well as the right feeling in my heart. Words are powerful, and when we speak the shared language of harmony, kindness, respect, truth, and inclusion, we're speaking the language needed to heal all in our world, and all with grace. If you'd like to take a few minutes in the silence and understand and see the beauty of grace for a few moments, let's take some quiet time. Coming back to the here and now, at the very moment I recognize any perceived transgression within myself or another, I reach deep and choose grace for myself and any others. I release any thought that I am unworthy of grace. Nothing I could do or fail to do would ever disturb my divine identity. Grace is a simple choice. It cannot be earned or bought because principle cannot be used up. The grace I offer and receive is inexhaustible. I can relax in complete trust because more will be available as I need it. And I rest knowing grace surrounds me and is always within me. As we gently come back to the here and now, I offer grace to others and to myself. And so it is. Namaste.